we wander into a world of old magic. And if you enjoy these Grimm's fairy tales, please give us a like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you'd like to hear some more. You can also support us on our Patreon, where you get access to our Spotify playlist and early access to all of these stories. But for now, let's get cozy. Step into the world of Grimm's fairy tales. A sorceress once had 3 sons who loved each other with brotherly affection. The old woman did not trust them. She thought they would rob her of her power. So she turned the eldest into an eagle who lived on top of a rocky mountain and was often seen whirling round in great circles or soaring high in the heavens. She changed the second son into a whale who lived in the
science is clear.
deep sea. And at times there would be seen a mighty stream of water rising in the air, which the whale spurted up like a water sprout. Each of the brothers, however, had the privilege of resuming their own natural forms for 2 hours each day. The third son, who feared that his mother might turn him into a wild beast, such as a bear or a wolf, went away secretly from home. He had heard also that in a beautiful castle called the Castle of the Golden Sun lived a beautiful princess who was under the spell of the sorcerer, and he longed to set her free. He knew, however, that to do this, he must risk his life. For already 23 young men had met with most terrible deaths in the attempt. And since the last of that number fell a victim, none had dared to venture near the spot. But the young man's heart knew no fear. So he determined to go and seek the castle of the Golden Sun. He had been traveling for a long time without finding it, when he came to a great forest, in which he wandered about till he lost his way. All at once, he saw in the distance 2 giants who beckoned and when he approached, they asked him what he was doing there. He told them that he had lost his way. "Oh," replied one, "we can soon show you. We know every corner of the forest, but you must help us in something first. We are both equally strong, and neither can overcome the other. And we have been fighting for a little hat, which is to belong to the one who conquers. Now, you little men are as clever as we are, and therefore we will let you decide who is to have it." "How can I fight with you for an old hat?" replied the youth. "Ah," they replied, "you call it old. You don't know its value. It is what is called a wishing hat, and whoever puts it on can wish himself where he will, and in a moment he is there." "Give me the hat," said the young man. "I will go on a little way, and when I call you must both run a race to overtake me, and whoever reaches me first, to him that hat shall belong." The giants agreed, and the youth, taking the hat, put it on and went away. But he was thinking so much of the princess that he forgot the giants and the hat, and continued to go farther and farther without calling them. Presently he sighed, and he said, "Ah, if I were only at the castle of the golden sun." The words were scarcely out of his mouth when he found himself on a high mountain, and before him stood the castle of the golden sun. He stepped in through the open door and went from room to room, till he came at last to one in which the princess sat. But how shocked he was when he saw her. She had a complexion as grey as ashes. Her face was wrinkled, her eyes dim, and her hair red. Are you a king's daughter whose beauty is so renowned? He cried. Ah, she replied, this is not my own shape. The eyes of mankind can only see me in this hideous form and appearance, for I am under a spell. If, however, you wish to know what I really am, you must look in the mirror, which never allows itself to be mistaken, but represents my image truthfully. She gave him, as she spoke, a looking glass, and he saw in it the representation of a beautiful maiden. As the world once knew her, with the tears of sorrow running down her cheeks. Tell me how to set you free, said the young man. I shrink from no danger. She replied, whoever can obtain a crystal ball and hold it before the sorcerer will destroy his power, and I shall instantly regain my proper form and freedom. But, she continued, so many have already lost their lives in the attempt, and it really pains me to think that your young blood should flow. If you venture to encounter such a dangerous undertaking. Nothing shall hinder me, he replied. Only tell me what I am to do. You shall know all, said the princess. Now listen. You must climb to the top of the mountain upon which this castle stands. And there you will find a wild buffalo standing by a spring. With him, you must fight. And if you are so fortunate as to kill him, a phoenix will rise out of his dead body. This creature you must also destroy, and in it you will find a red hot egg. And if you break it, instead of a yolk will be seen the crystal ball. But you must be careful not to let the egg fall on the ground. you do, it will immediately ignite and burn up everything near it. The egg also will melt, and with it the crystal ball, so that all your trouble will be lost. The youth, on hearing this, did not delay a moment. He went out and found the buffalo at the spring, snorting and billowing. The combat, however, did not last long, for after 2 or 3 thrusts with his sword, the animal lay dead at the young man's feet. In a moment, there rose a fiery bird from the buffalo's body, who attempted to fly away. But the eagle, the youth's brother, who had been changed by the sorceress, and who was flying in the air above their heads, darted swiftly down, drove the bird towards the sea, and so wounded it with its beak that in her distress she dropped the egg. It did not fall into the sea, but on a fisherman's little hut, which stood on the shore. And immediately the hut and all around it were in flames.
That's funny.
At this moment, there rose from the sea an immense stream of water, which fell on the hut and quickly extinguished the fire. The second brother, the whale, while swimming that way, had also been able to assist the youth by squirting up the water, as whales do. No sooner was the fire extinguished, and the young man searched among the embers for the egg, and luckily found it, safe and perfect. It had not melted, but the sudden rush of the cold water had broken the shell, and he could easily remove the crystal ball. The youth went immediately to the sorcerer and held the ball before him. "My power is now destroyed," he said, "and you are the king of the castle of the golden sun. You can also restore your brothers to their natural forms whenever you like." The young man, on hearing this, hastened to the princess, and on entering her chamber, stood before him in the full blaze of her beauty. Then, with joyful hearts, they exchanged rings with each other and swore eternal love. There was once a man and his wife who had only one child, and they lived in a far-away pleasant valley quite alone. It happened one day that the mother went into the wood to gather fir twigs, and she took her little son Hans with her. It was in the springtime, and the boy, who was about 2 years old, ran about the wood and plucked the many-colored flowers in all the happiness of childhood. Suddenly, there sprang out upon them from the bushes 2 robbers. They seized the mother and the child and carried them away into the depths of the forest, in which from year to year no human being ever penetrated. In vain, the poor woman entreated the robbers to let her and her child go. They had hearts of stone and would not listen to her prayers, but led them both away. After dragging them through dust and thorn bushes for nearly 2 hours, they came to a rock in which there was a door, and the robber knocked. It was very quickly opened, and after passing through a long dark passage, they came into a large cave, which was lighted by a fire burning on the hearth. On the sides of the cave hung swords and daggers and other instruments which glittered in the firelight, and in the middle stood a black table at which sat 4 other robbers gambling, and one of these was the robber chief. He came forward when he saw the woman, addressed her kindly, and told her to be at peace and without anxiety, for that no one should hurt her in this cave. All he required her to do was to take care of the housekeeping for them, and if everything was kept in order, her position would not be so bad after all. Then they gave her something to eat, pointed to a bed in which she and her child could sleep. Now the woman remained for many years with the robbers, while Hans grew tall and strong. His mother told him stories, taught him to read from an old book of chivalry which she had found in the cave. When Hans was about 9 years old, he made himself a good strong club from a fir branch and hid it behind his bed. He then went to his mother and said, "Dear mother, do tell me just once where my father is. I want to see him so much." But his mother was silent. She would not tell him because she feared it would create in him a longing for home. And she knew the wicked robbers not let him go away from the cave. Yet she felt heartbroken to think that Hans could not go to his father. That night, when the robbers came home from their marauding, Hans fetched his club, and placing himself before the robber chief, he exclaimed, "I want to know where my father is, and if you won't tell me, I will knock you down." The chief just laughed, gave Hans such a box on the ear, he rolled under the table like a ball. Hans got up quickly without a word, but he thought to himself, "I will wait another year before I ask again. I shall manage better next time." The year passed away, and Hans prepared himself for another attempt. So he fetched his club, whisked off a little dust from it, and examining it carefully, said, "It is a brave, clever little club." At night, the robbers came home in good spirits, for they brought with them such a large booty, and at supper they drank a great deal of wine, bottle after bottle, till at last their heads began to droop, and their eyes to be heavy. Then Hans took up his club, and standing boldly before them asked again where his father was. The chief gave him such a tremendous box on the ear that he rolled quite under the table, but he was up again in a moment and struck such rapid blows right and left amongst them all, which they were too tipsy to resist. He very soon had them on the ground, unable to move arm or leg. His mother stood in the corner watching him, full of wonder at her boy's bravery and strength. When his work was finished, he went to his mother and said, "I have been in earnest this time, and now I must know where my father is." she replied, "We will go and search till we find him." They took the key of the long passage leading to the door from the pocket of the chief, and Hans fetched a great flour sack, into which they packed gold and silver, many other beautiful things which they found, till the bag was full, and then the boy took it on his back. When they left the cave, the change from the darkness almost put out his eyes. But presently he got used to the daylight and the green wood, the bright flowers, the song of the bird, the glorious sun shining in the sky delighted the boy's heart. He stood looking around him with astonishment, as if he could not understand it. But his mother led him away. For around 2 hours they wandered about, before they could find the road to their cottage. At last they arrived, fortunately, at the lonely valley, and there it stood before them, and the father of Hans was sitting at the door. When he recognized his wife and heard that Hans was his son, he wept for joy, for he had long supposed that they were both dead. Hans, however, although he was only 12 years old, was a head taller than his father. They went together into the little room, but as soon as Hans laid the sack on a bench, the walls of the house began to crack. The bench broke first, and then the floor, so that the heavy sack sank through into the cellar below. "Bless me," cried the father. "What are you doing, Hans? Why is the house falling about our ears?" "Never mind, father," said the youth. "Don't let any gray hairs grow over that trouble. There is in my bag more than enough to pay for building a new house." As it seemed dangerous to remain in the old house, Hans and his father quickly began to build a new one. Then they had cattle to purchase and land to buy, and housekeeping to provide, so they had plenty to do. Hans cultivated the fields, and when he followed the plough and guided it through the ground, The oxen had scarcely any weight to draw. He was so strong. The next spring, Hans asked his father to keep the money he had brought from the robber's cave, and said that all he wanted was a heavy walking stick to take with him on his travels, as he intended to visit distant lands. The wished-for walking stick was soon ready, and Hans quitted his father's house and journeyed on till he came to a dark, woody forest. Presently, he heard a cracking of branches in one of the trees, and looking up, he saw a great overgrown fellow winding and twisting a cord round a fir tree and bending the tree as if it had been a willow twig. "Hi," cried Hans. "What are you about up there?" "Oh," replied the man, "I gathered the twigs yesterday, and now I mean to pull down the whole tree." "I like that," thought Hans. "He has plenty of strength, I see." So he called out to him, "Leave the tree alone and come with me." The man clambered down at this request, and when he stood by Hans, he was a head taller, although Hans was a big fellow himself. "You should be called Fur Twister," said Hans, as they went away together. After traveling some distance, they heard such violent knocking and hammering that at every stroke the earth trembled, and as they walked, they saw an enormous rock, before which stood a giant, striking off large pieces of rock with his fist. Hans asked him what he was doing, and he replied, "When I want to sleep at night, the bears and wolves, all sorts of wild animals come sniffing and yelping around me, and they will not let me close my eyes. So, I am going to make a cave in this rock, that I may lie at night in peace." "This fellow may suit me," thought Hans. So he said, "Leave your house building and go with me, and you shall be called Rock Splitter." The man was quite willing, so the three rambled on through the wood together. Wherever they came, the wild animals fled in terror from their path. One evening, castle on a rising ground, up which they ascended, and entering the great hall, they laid themselves down and slept. The next morning, Hans went out into the garden, which was quite a wilderness full of thorns and briars. Suddenly, from amidst the brushwood, a wild boar sprung upon him. But Hans lifted his staff, and with one blow laid him dead at his feet. Then he took the dead animal on his shoulder and carried him into the castle. They roasted a portion of the flesh for dinner and enjoyed themselves, feeling quite content, for they had now sufficient food to last for some time. After this, they agreed among themselves that two should go out hunting every day, and each take it in turns to stay at home and cook their meals. The first day, the fur twister remained at the old castle, while Hans and the rock splitter went to hunt. While the fur twister was in the kitchen, busy at his cooking, there came a little withered up old man to the castle and demanded meat. "Be off, you little scamp," he cried. "You will get no meat from me." To the astonishment of the fur twister, the little insignificant-looking old man sprang upon him, and before he could prevent him, beat him so terribly that he fell to the ground and gasped for breath. But the little man did not go away till he had vented his rage upon him. When the two others returned home, the fur twister did not tell them of the little man, nor the dreadful thrashing he had given him. He thought, when they remain at home, they must take their chance with the little wretch as well as I. And this thought gave him great pleasure. The following day, the rock splitter remained at home. The same visitor made his appearance. When the little man found meat again refused, he attacked the rock splitter in the same way, and beat and overpowered him as he had done the other. At last, the day came for Hans to stay at home, and though the others knew what he would have done to endure, they both remained silent and thought Hans ought to taste the soup as well as they. busy preparing the dinner in the kitchen, not expecting any visitors. Presently, as he stood skimming the pot at the fire, in walked the little man, demanded at once a piece of meat. The poor little wretch is hungry, thought Hans. I will give him my share, that the others may not come short. So he offered him a piece of meat. As soon as the dwarf devoured it, he asked for more. And the good-natured Hans gave him some a second time and said, "This is a beautiful piece, and you must be contented with it." But the dwarf asked for a third supply, and when Hans refused, the wicked little wretch was just going to spring upon him and serve him as he had served the other two. But he was mistaken this time. Hans, without much exertion, gave him 2 such severe cuts that he rushed down the steps of the castle in surprise and fright. Hans, in his haste to run after him, fell down, rolled over and over, so that he lost time. And when he had recovered himself, the dwarf was far away. Hans followed him, however, quickly, and saw him slip into a rocky cave. So after taking particular notice of the place, he returned home.
I have no idea what you're doing.
The other two, when they reached the castle, were astonished to see Hans quite well and unhurt. But he told them all what had happened. Then they could not any longer be silent about the dwarf's visits and how he had treated them all. Hans laughed, and he said, "It served you right. Why should you have been so greedy with your meat? But still, it is too bad to think that such great fellows as you should have been thrashed by a dwarf." However, they all determined to punish the little wretch. Now they knew where to find him. So, they took a large basket and a strong cord and went to the cave in the rocks, into which the dwarf had slipped. They first let Hans down by a rope in a basket with his club staff, and when he reached the ground, he saw a door which he opened, and in a kind of room sat was bound with fetters, and she looked at Hans so sadly, and he was touched with pity for her and thought, I must free her from the power of this wicked dwarf. He turned quickly, and with one stroke of his heavy walking staff, the little wretch fell to the ground, dead. Immediately the fetters dropped from the maiden, and Hans was enraptured with her beauty. She told him that she was a king's daughter who had been stolen from her home by a wicked count, and by him made a prisoner in this rocky cave, with the dwarf to keep guard over her, and terribly he oppressed, tormented her. Upon hearing this, Hans placed the maiden in the basket and called to his companions to draw her up. The basket came down again, but Hans did not quite trust his fellow travelers, for, thought he, they have been already false in not telling me of the dwarf's visits, and who knows, they may have some design against me. So he placed his heavy staff in the basket, and it was fortunate for him that he did so, for when the basket was halfway up, they let go the cord, and if Hans had really been sitting in it, he must have been dashed to pieces. It was, however, still a sad difficulty for him to get out of that deep place, and ponder as he might, there seemed no way of escape. It is very hard, he said to himself, to know that I must stay here and be starved. But as he wondered, he came again to the room in which the young lady had been sitting, and saw on the finger of the dead dwarf a ring, sparkling and glittering. He drew off the ring and placed it on his own finger, and as he turned it round,
Help me find the words.
he suddenly heard a rushing sound
Coco.
over his head. He looked up and saw a spirit of the air hovering over him, who said he was his master, and asked him what his commands were. Hans felt at first quite bewildered, but on saying he wished to be drawn up out of that cave, in a moment flew. When he reached the top, none of his companions were to be seen, and on going to the old castle, he found it
What was we on
empty.
this journey? 2020, innit?
The fir twister and the rock splitter had gone away and taken the beautiful lady with them.
Oh, the date, the actual date today. Like, we've been going from there forever, man.
Hans directly turned his ring on his finger, and the spirit of the air appeared and told him that his two companions were on the sea. Hans ran with all his might down to the seashore and was just in time to see, at a distance, a boat in which his false companions were rowing away as fast as they could. In his violent rage, and without a thought, he jumped into the water, still carrying his heavy staff, and attempted to swim after them. The weight of his staff dragged him down, and he was on the point of sinking when he thought about the ring. The moment he turned it around, the spirit of the air appeared and carried him with the speed of lightning to the boat. He sprang in, and with 2 or 3 blows of his staff, he gave his false companions the reward they deserved, and threw them into the water. He then rowed away quickly with the princess, whom he had twice rescued. And on reaching the shore, he at once took her home to her father and mother, who were full of joy at finding her still alive and well. And Hans married that beautiful princess and lived ever after in the greatest happiness.
Hans Christian Andersen. I'm Hans Christian Andersen. I'm Hans Christian Andersen.